I moved to Edgewood a few weeks ago. I thought I could find inspiration in the beauty of this small town. As I unpacked boxes in my living room, I heard it, a faint school bell ringing nearby. I paused. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks. But then it rang again, louder this time. I shrugged it off. Old buildings make funny noises, I told myself. But I couldn't shake it off. Days passed and the bell gnawed at me. I heard it at odd hours, the sound echoing like a child calling for help. I took walks around town, hoping to meet locals. They were friendly, but when I mentioned the old schoolhouse, their faces changed. "Be careful," they said. "You don't know what's out there." I started to see shadows moving behind the dusty windows of the abandoned building. I thought I was imagining it, but I shook my head, trying to dismiss it. Still, something didn't feel right. My skin tingled as I walked past the schoolhouse. The bell tolled again, ringing louder. Each sound felt like a warning. One night, I worked late on a project. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the direction of the schoolhouse. My heart raced, cold creeping up my spine. I glanced outside, but it was dark and empty. I tried to focus, but the images of the shadows and that bell filled my thoughts. My fingers trembled as they danced across the keyboard. I needed fresh air, so I stepped outside. I stood in front of the old schoolhouse, the moon shining down. The night was dead quiet, too quiet. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Then the bell rang again, sending chills down my back. I froze. The front door creaked open a little. My heart pounded. I didn't want to go in, but I felt a strange pull, like something was waiting for me. Hesitantly, I took a step closer, then another. I peered inside. Darkness swallowed the space. Old desks sat silently, rotting against faded walls. A gust of wind rattled the window. Did something just move? Before I knew it, I saw a figure dart past the window. I jumped back, my breath hitching. "Who's there?" I called out. Silence. My heart raced and the bell chimed again, echoing like it was mocking me. My instinct screamed at me to run. I turned, but then I heard it, a faint whisper asking, "Why did you come here?" I stopped. Nobody was behind me. I was completely alone. Now, I wonder, was it real? Or was it my mind, creating shadows out of fear? I don't know. I can't shake the feeling that I need to go back. There's something hidden in that old schoolhouse, and I can't ignore it any longer. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to go back to the schoolhouse. It gnawed at me all morning as I tried to work. Every time I tried to write, my thoughts drifted back to the whispers, the shadows, and that ominous bell ringing in the night. By noon, I decided I needed answers. The locals wouldn't talk about the school, but maybe they'd share its history. I walked to the town library, hoping to find old records or newspapers that detailed its story. The sun was bright, but an uneasy feeling still clung to me. As I stepped inside the library, the musty scent of aging books filled the air. I approached the librarian, a kind-looking woman with glasses perched on her nose. "Excuse me, do you have any information about the old schoolhouse?" I asked. She hesitated, her fingers stilling over the typewriter she had been using. "Why do you want to know about that old place?" she asked, eyeing me cautiously. "I heard strange sounds at night. Something just feels off," I admitted. Her expression shifted. "There are stories. It's best not to stir them up." I pushed, curiosity taking hold. "What happened there?" With a sigh, she led me to a small section of the library, dusty and rarely visited. She pulled out an ancient book, its spine cracking as she opened it. This schoolhouse was abandoned after several children went missing. The bell rang each time a child vanished. A chill ran through me. "How many?" "3," she whispered. "People say the school never forgets them. The bell tolls for souls that haven't found peace." My stomach tightened. I had heard about children going missing in the past, but I didn't put it together until now. "Do they know what happened?" I asked, my voice trembling. "No one knows," she replied. "Most left after the last child disappeared. They didn't want to tempt fate." I left the library feeling uneasy. The stories of loss buried deep in the town felt heavy on my shoulders. I had to go back. I didn't know why, but I felt like I had a connection to those lost children. That evening, as the sun slipped below the horizon, I made my way to the schoolhouse again. The shadows grew longer, and the bell tolled softly in the distance, beckoning me. I felt as if a hand was pulling me inside. As I reached the door, it swung open wider this time, revealing the darkness within. "You're not going to keep me away," I whispered to myself, heart pounding with fear and determination. I stepped inside, the wooden floor creaking underfoot. That's when I saw it, a flicker of light in one of the classrooms. My throat felt tight. I couldn't just turn back now. I took a step toward the light, compelled to discover its source. I took a deep breath and moved forward. The air felt thick. Just as I reached the door of the classroom,
everything went dark. I blinked. The blackness pressed in on me, swallowing the world around. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming, my mind caught in some endless abyss. But then, focus slowly returned, and I felt the rough surface of the wall beside me. Panic surged through me. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding small, swallowed by the silence. No response, just empty stillness. I slid my palm along the wall until I felt a door frame. I pushed it open, and a rush of cool air greeted me. It wasn't as dark here, but my heart sank nonetheless.
The flicker of light was gone. I stood in a small classroom, desks arranged in neat rows, untouched by time. Dust motes danced in the faint glow of moonlight filtering through the grimy windows. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but my feet refused to move. Then I heard it, the bell, distant yet ominous. It chimed once, low and mournful. The sound echoed in my mind, rattling my nerves. I instinctively turned toward the door, but the hallway beyond seemed to stretch infinitely into darkness. I was caught between fear and a nagging curiosity. "I can't be the only one here," I muttered. "There has to be something. Someone." Fumbling in my pockets, I pulled out my phone, its screen flickering to life. I swiped to turn on the flashlight. The beam pierced the dark, illuminating the room's corners, but I didn't see anything unusual, just peeling paint and broken windows. I felt a little better, but not much. My instincts urged caution as I stepped closer to the teacher's desk. An old book rested open, its pages brittle and yellowing. I leaned in, peering at the faded handwriting. "Why were you afraid?" the words read. A chill washed over me. Suddenly, a faint whisper floated through the air, barely audible but unmistakable. "Help us." I froze. Tricks of the mind, or something more? I had to find it. I had to help. I glanced back at the door before moving towards the sound. It was coming from the next room over, so I crept forward. The floor creaked under my weight, and each step filled me with dread. Just when I thought I might turn back, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, a scrap of paper sticking out from beneath a nearby desk. I bent down and pulled it out. My pulse raced as I realized it was a faded flyer announcing the school's closing. But something else caught my attention. "Last seen near the bell tower." The words swam in front of me as the realization struck. I was drawn to the bell. That's where it all began. It was more than just the stories. I had to confront the truth lurking beneath. Before I could catch my breath, I heard the echo again, this time closer. "Help us." But this time it was different. Different voices. They seemed desperate. I turned back towards the door, the eerie feeling resurfacing. Then I saw it, a shadow flicker past the doorway. Something moved. I wasn't alone after all. "Who's there?" I called, my voice barely above a whisper. The answer came not in sound, but in an icy breeze that swept through the room, extinguishing my phone's light. I was engulfed in darkness once more. My heart raced as I strained to hear anything in the suffocating darkness. I was alone, yet it felt like eyes were watching me. Each creak and groan of the building seemed amplified, filling the silence with voices of the past. I fumbled for my phone, praying the battery wasn't dead. With a quick press, the screen flickered back to life, casting a weak glow in front of me. I directed the beam toward the door, hesitating before stepping through. What if whatever was in the room with me had followed? There was only one way to find out. Heart pounding, I pushed open the door leading into the next room. This classroom looked identical to the last, more untouched relics of a time long gone. But I could sense something was off, an electric charge in the air. A feeling of urgency washed over me. I turned my flashlight toward the corners, my eyes darting, searching for signs of life. Then I heard it again, a whisper mingling with the wind. "Help us." The voices sounded closer now, desperate. I glanced around the room, trying to pinpoint the source, but nothing stood out, just more dusty desks and ancient chalkboards. Just as doubt began to creep in, I saw movement near the window. A curtain fluttered, as if someone had brushed past it. "Hello?" I called out again, my voice louder this time. "Is someone there?" I stepped closer to the window, stepping over a fallen chair. My flashlight beam landed on something unexpected, a small doll propped up against the wall. It seemed so out of place, and my stomach knotted at the sight. I knelt down to investigate. The doll's glassy eyes stared blankly up at me, its dress tattered and dirtied. Gripped between its plastic fingers was a note. I gently pried it free and unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky, as if written in haste. "Find the bell. They won't let me go." My pulse quickened. The bell tower. It wasn't just a story. It was a link to whatever darkness clung to this place. I had to go there.
But before I could make a plan, a loud, jarring sound resounded through the building. It was the bell, and it was ringing. Panic gripped me as I stood, glancing back at the doorway. Darkness loomed, swallowing the room behind me. As I turned to face the window, the shadows seemed to shift and hiss. The whispers were growing louder, angry and desperate, drowning out my thoughts. "Help us," they cried, all around me now. The room felt like it was closing in, trapping me as I gasped for air. And then, out of nowhere, a figure appeared at the edge of my light, just a quick glimpse of a face, wide eyes filled with despair. I stepped back, the realization hitting me with full force. "Wait," I cried, but the figure vanished into the swirling darkness. I had lost them. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had to find that bell tower. I had to confront whatever was waiting for me there. With one last glance around the room, I bolted toward the door, the sound of the bell pulsing in my ears. Something terrible was waiting, and I could no longer ignore it. I darted through the doorway, the echo of the bell ringing in my ears. Each step felt heavy, as if the very walls were trying to hold me back. I couldn't stop now. I needed to find the bell tower before whatever shadows lurked chased me down.
I followed the hallway, my flashlight beam dancing across the faded lockers in peeling paint. The whispers hadn't died down. They seemed to follow me, urging me forward. "Help us," they insisted, growing more frantic with every step. My pulse raced in response, a distorted rhythm against the ghostly chorus. After what felt like an eternity, I found a staircase marked with worn-out brown stairs leading up. I hesitated just an instant. What awaited me at the top? But I could not turn back. The only way to silence those cries, my own fear, was to face it head-on. So I ascended the stairs, every creak under my weight sending a jolt of fear through me. At the top, I found another hallway. Faint light seeped through an open door at the end. I approached cautiously, invoking my courage with each step. I reached the door and pushed it open, the hinges a chilling groan in the quiet. The room was cluttered with dusty relics, a mix of furniture and broken clocks littering the floor. But the most striking feature was a large circular window that dominated the far wall. I stepped closer, mesmerized by the intricate designs etched into the glass. Sunlight streamed through, casting eerie shadows that curled around me like fingers reaching out. And there it was, a massive rusted bell hanging from the ceiling. It loomed over the room, ominous yet strangely inviting. But it wasn't the only thing that danced in the light. On an old wooden table lay the remains of another note, hastily torn as if written in desperation. It read, "The bell tolls 8 times, times up." I felt the chill of dread wrap around me as the bell rang again. Once, twice, 3 times. Each toll sent a shiver down my spine. I had to act. Just then, the air thickened. I turned quickly, and shadows began to coalesce into a shape at the doorway. The figure was smaller, rounder, a child, eyes wide with fear, mouth moving silently. I strained to hear, but all I heard was the bell's relentless tolling and my frantic heartbeat. "Help," the child mouthed, before the darkness swallowed them whole. I rushed towards where they stood, but they were gone. Panic flooded my senses. I looked around the room. Nothing reflected the presence that just abandoned me. I was entirely alone again, except for the bell, which continued to toll louder and louder. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered and went out, plunging me into a pitch-black void. The familiar whispers intensified into shrieks, clawing at my sanity. I fumbled for my phone, but the flashlight flickered one last time before dying completely. I was left with nothing but shadows closing in around me. Then, in the gloom, I heard it again, the voice of the child, now echoing from the depths of the darkness. "You need to leave." But where was I supposed to go? I could only center myself on the bell above, its sound still ringing in my head. I knew I had to find a way out before whatever haunted these halls trapped me here too. Fighting against the rising tide of fear, I swallowed hard and tried to pinpoint a way back. Then I realized there might be something in the bell tower waiting for me, something I hadn't yet discovered. But I felt time slipping away. I stumbled backward, my heart racing in the suffocating darkness. My hands brushed against the cold, dusty wall as I grasped for something, anything, that could ground me. Panic clawed at my throat, but there was no time for hesitation. The child's voice reverberated in my head, pushing me forward. I focused on the sound of the bell. Each toll drew me closer to it. I could not see, but I could follow the resounding echoes that seemed to guide me through the shadows. "Leave," the child had said, but I wasn't ready to abandon whatever mystery lay ahead. I needed answers. I felt a sudden draft against my skin, a whisper of air that pulled me toward the bell. It was a sign. The only thing I could do was keep moving. I shuffled along, listening for the bell's toll, my feet lightly brushing against debris on the floor. Finally, I turned toward what I hoped was the bell's location. The room opened up around me, and the faint light from the circular window, though diminished, flickered to life again. I was close. As I reached the left wall, I extended my hand, searching for the heavy wooden frame of the bell. Instead, my fingers grazed over something unexpected. A latch. It felt out of place, almost as if it was waiting for me to find it. With a deep breath, I pulled it down. A door sprang open, unexpected, and creaking loudly. My heart raced, but curiosity propelled me forward. This was the moment of discovery. What lay beyond? I stepped through the door, greeted by a steep staircase leading up. The air was thick with dust and the scent of rust. I hesitated only a moment before climbing each step, propelled by the whispers that demanded I follow. As I ascended, the bell continued to toll, a metronome of urgency. At the top, a small room greeted me, filled with more decay and disarray. In the center stood another bell, this one smaller, but still menacing in its presence. It was adorned with strange symbols, unfamiliar, yet somehow familiar. Was this the bell that rang at 8? As I approached, I noticed something strange. On the floor, illuminated by faint light streaming through the gaps in the walls, lay pieces of shattered glass. I bent down, my heart pounding in my ears. They formed a pattern, almost like a message. But before I could piece it together, another sound echoed behind me. Someone was in the room, soft footsteps. My stomach dropped as I turned, half expecting another child. Instead, I was met by a figure cloaked in shadows. They stood still, just outside the light, their intentions unreadable. The bell chimed again, once, twice. I couldn't tell if the figure was friend or foe. A rush of adrenaline flooded my veins. I was moving before I realized it, stepping between the bell and the figure. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure took a step forward, revealing just enough of their face for me to see fear mirrored in their eyes. "You shouldn't be here," they warned, urgency lacing their tone. And then it hit me, that chilling moment of realization. I wasn't the only one trapped in this maze. Before I could react, the bell struck again, echoing through the tower like a death knell. The atmosphere shifted, and the darkness pressed in around us. Suddenly, the figure turned and bolted toward the edge of the room, leaving me trapped between the unknown and the tolling bell. A flicker of movement caught my eye, and something glinted in the scattered glass. My heart raced as I leaned closer. That's when I saw it, a reflection of something that wasn't just glass. It was part of the message, a clue interwoven in the chaos. And I knew, whatever happened next, time was running out. I blinked rapidly, trying to process what I had just seen. The glint in the glass had caught my attention, but now it moved, a small shard, catching the dim light almost like it was alive. Panic surged again. I couldn't afford to be distracted now. The figure's fear echoed in my mind. What could possibly be so dangerous here? I tried to chase after the figure, but every step felt like wading through thick mud. They were quick, slipping beyond my reach, and I could hear the soft thud of their footsteps disappearing into the hallway. With each chime of the bell, I could feel time slipping further away. What if they were right? What if I shouldn't be here? I couldn't just stand there. I turned back to the glass shards on the floor. The closer I looked, the clearer the pattern became. A map, perhaps. I shuffled through the debris, carefully picking up each piece, fitting them back together in my mind. Each shard contained letters, forming a word I couldn't quite grasp. "Help," I whispered to myself, a question born of desperate clarity. I pushed the thought aside as I realized just how ominous that word felt in this context. A sudden noise from behind urged me to look back. The figure had stopped in the hallway, their features illuminated briefly by a flickering light. In that moment, I caught a glimpse of fear replaced by something else. Urgency. "Please, you need to come," they shouted, beckoning me. Their voice was filled with desperation. I hesitated, weighing my options. I had been following the bell, chasing shadows, but now I must decide. Then darkness swallowed the light, and a heavy silence settled in.
Instinct kicked in, and before I could think too much about it, I followed their call. I rushed down the hallway, each step resonating in the vast emptiness. The air shifted again, growing colder. Just ahead, I saw the figure round a corner. There was urgency in their movements, and I pushed myself to keep pace. But then I stumbled over something. I barely caught myself against the wall, breathing ragged.
I looked down to see what I had tripped over. A small candle, intact but covered in dust. I picked it up. Memories of light pushing against the dark flashed in my mind. If I could find a way to light it, perhaps it would help us. But just as the thought took root, a terrible sound erupted from the bell behind me, louder than before. My heart raced. I couldn't tell if that was a warning or a countdown. "Get in here!" the figure shouted again. I glanced back toward the noise. It was maddening, the toll echoing through the very bones of the tower. I made my choice and sprinted toward the figure. I reached them just as the floor beneath us trembled. A crack spiderwebbed across the wooden boards, and I could feel the tower shifting as if it were alive. "Now!" they yelled, and suddenly I was pulled into a narrow alcove just off the main corridor. The walls were lined with more of those strange symbols, and for a moment the world outside disappeared. But as we stood there, breathless and shaken, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was coming was closer than ever. There was one question screaming in my mind. What had I stumbled into, and could we survive what was about to happen next? As we crouched in the alcove, the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. I could hear my heart thrumming in my ears, a constant reminder of the impending dread. The figure beside me was breathing heavily, their eyes darting to the entrance as if expecting something to burst through at any moment. "Do you know what that bell means?" they whispered, their voice trembling. I shook my head, still trying to catch up with everything. "No, I thought it was just an old clock." "It's a warning," they said, their gaze piercing through the dimness. "And it means we're running out of time." I felt a chill at their words. The sense of urgency was palpable, but I also felt a flicker of defiance. "What do you mean? Why are we hiding?" "Because whatever it is, it follows the sound." Before I could respond, a low rumble vibrated through the ground beneath us. The walls of the alcove seemed to pulse, as if sensing the tension outside. I pressed my hand against the cold surface, trying to steady myself. Everything felt off-kilter, like I had stepped into a different reality, one where danger lurked around every corner. The dark symbols on the walls twisted and shifted in my mind, like a language I was meant to decipher but couldn't. Then, without warning, the air shifted once again. A low growl echoed from the hallway, reverberating through the corridor. My breath caught. The figure beside me looked terrified, but resolved. "We have to move. It's coming," they urged, their voice barely louder than a whisper. "Where?" I managed to ask, my voice shaky. "There's a door at the end of the corridor. We can escape through there." My instinct was screaming at me to flee, but dread angered me to the spot. I glanced back, considering the darkened corridor we had just left, and felt the vibrations of what I could only assume was a living nightmare creeping closer. As if sensing my hesitance, they grabbed my arm. "Now!" The urgency in their voice pulled me from my thoughts, and I nodded. We bolted from the alcove, hearts pounding in sync. The hallway was dark, but held a promise of escape. I focused on the flickers of light illuminating the path ahead. But as we rushed down the corridor, more sounds filled the air. Whispering voices and scratching noises echoed, as if the shadows were alive. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A figure towering in the shadows, lurking just beyond the reach of the flickering light. Panic surged within me. "Keep going," the figure beside me urged, pushing me forward as the shadows seemed to bend. The growl grew louder, more vicious, mixing with a chorus of whispers. Without looking back, I sprinted toward the door I desperately hoped existed. I could feel the wind of something passing close behind me, brushing against my neck like a cold, clammy hand. The fear I'd tried to push aside gripped me tightly, and as we neared the door, I felt a surge of hope. But then, suddenly, I was snatched back. The figure was loose from my grasp, pulled into the darkness, their scream muffled as I stood frozen with horror. I turned just in time to see them vanish into realms I dared not comprehend. "No!" I shouted, but the word hung hollow in the air. With shaking hands, I found the door handle and yanked it open, desperate to escape whatever had become of my companion. Just as I stepped through, I caught one last glimpse, something dark creeping out of the shadows, almost as if it relished the hunt. I slammed the door behind me, but an echoing laughter mingled with the growls, and I knew I had crossed a threshold from which I might never return. I stumbled into the next room, heart racing and mind spinning.
I slammed the door shut behind me, gasping for breath. The sound it made resonated in the silence that followed. I felt momentarily safe, but the weight of what had just happened pressed against me, demanding attention. The room was dim, with only a few flickers of light coming from a battered lantern sitting on a rickety table. Dust motes floated in the air around me, illuminated by that dim glow. I could barely make out the contours of what looked like old furniture, covered in sheets that had probably not been moved in years. I stepped further inside, half hoping I would find some clue or weapon. My mind couldn't shake the memory of my companion's terrified face as they disappeared into darkness. I felt the sting of guilt, but time was running out. I had to figure out what was going on. My eyes darted around the room, scanning for anything useful. A mirror leaned against the wall, its surface clouded and spiderwebbed. I caught a glimpse of myself, a mess of fear and adrenaline.
I looked away quickly, unable to bear the sight. As I stepped toward the back of the room, the floor creaked beneath me. Each sound felt amplified. I paused, straining to listen. My pulse quickened again. There were murmurs, faint but unmistakable, seeping through the cracks of the wall. I approached, instinctively leaning closer to catch any words. It knows, coming, follows the sound. I barely registered what I was hearing when suddenly the lantern flickered violently. My stomach dropped as darkness washed over the room, plunging me into a confusing void. I reached for the walls, my fingers scrambling over peeling paint, trying to ground myself. Panic set in. Was it back? Had it found me? Just as quickly as it had gone dark, the light returned, bright and steady. But now I wasn't alone. A shape loomed near the doorway I had just escaped through, the silhouette waving as if it could see me. I froze, the air hitching in my throat. It was tall and wide, its features shrouded in shadow. My instinct told me to run, but my feet were glued to the floor. The figure stepped into the light, revealing an outline that made my blood run cold. It wore a mask, twisted and grotesque, one I had only seen in nightmares. Without thinking, I turned to flee, tearing toward the opposite side of the room. My heart raced as I reached a window. I knew the danger outside could be just as bad, but I was running out of choices. As I fumbled with the latch, the figure behind me emitted a low growl. The noise sent shivers down my spine. My palms were slick with sweat as I finally managed to pry the window open. I heard footsteps behind me, echoing, moving closer. "Go!" I whispered to myself, my breath hitching as I squeezed through the narrow opening. The sounds of the room faded, but a haunting whisper remained etched in my mind. "It follows the sound." I crashed to the ground outside, the cool night air hitting me like a slap. I scrambled to my feet, but I had no idea where to run. The shadows seemed to reach for me, stretching and elongating in the moonlight. And just as I thought I might be free, I caught sight of something slithering through the darkness. That's when I knew whatever had entered that room with me was now outside, stalking me. I ran, fueled by adrenaline and fear, glancing over my shoulder as the atmosphere thickened with dread. The shadows shifted, whispering and writhing like an entity alive, menacing and unnerving. "Come on," I told myself, "focus." I had to escape. Ahead of me loomed the remnants of the school, its silhouette dark and ominous against the night sky. I headed towards the woods that bordered the property, hoping to lose whatever pursued me among the trees' twisted roots. As I plunged into the underbrush, brambles tore at my clothes, but I couldn't afford to stop. Every rustle from behind made my heart race. Was it chasing me, or just lingering back, waiting for the right moment? I pushed the thought away. The whispers from the schoolhouse echoed in my mind. Help us. Not a chance I'd look back. I ducked and weaved, desperate to put distance between us. The moonlight filtered through the thick canopy overhead, casting fleeting shadows. My breath came in quick bursts, each inhale slightly steadier as I maneuvered through the trees. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but something deep within me kept pressing forward. I didn't know how much time had passed when suddenly the chilling growl rang out again, closer this time. Panic surged anew. I could feel it gaining ground. "No!" I gasped, willing my body to move faster. With renewed fervor, I sprinted deeper into the woods, branches scratching at my arms, but I couldn't stop now. Then I burst into a small clearing, moonlight pouring down in stark brightness. In the center, something caught my eye. A dilapidated shed. A flicker of hope ignited within me. Perhaps it could provide the concealment I desperately needed. Without hesitation, I dashed toward it, flinging the door open and slipping inside. The interior was dark and musty, filled with forgotten tools and cobwebs, but it felt safer than being exposed in the open.
I pressed my back against the wall, slowing my racing heart as I strained my ears. Silence enveloped me at first, only to be broken by a chilling scrape against the shed's exterior. Whatever or whoever it was had followed me here. With every breath, I hoped it wouldn't find me. The whispers outside were louder now, pushing against the walls like a wave. Help us. In this moment of quiet interrogation, I couldn't help but wonder about those lost children and their connection to the school and to the bell. Dark thoughts crowded around me, but I tried pushing them away. And then a noise shattered my concentration, what sounded like footsteps slipping away. Suddenly, there was only silence. The oppressive weight was unbearable. Minutes felt like hours as I crouched in the dimness. Had I escaped? I peered cautiously out of a crack in the door, just the tiniest sliver, holding my breath. The clearing was empty, but I knew better than to trust the illusion of calm. Maybe it was just hiding. The thought solidified my fear. Determined to find a way out, I crawled over to the rickety window, using caution with every creak of the floorboards beneath me. I struggled to find a grip, pushing until I had an opening wide enough to peek through. The moon illuminated the path back to the schoolhouse, a grim reminder of the danger I'd barely evaded. Instinct screamed at me, urging me to return, but there was still that gnawing curiosity about the bell. My connection to those trapped kids lingered. I hesitated, but made a choice. Climbing back through the window, I landed silently on the forest floor, ears attuned to any sound. The bell had tolled so many times. Could I stop it? Could I help them? Gritting my teeth, I sprinted back through the trees, heart racing again as I reached the edge of the clearing.
The school loomed larger than life, a beacon of questions that still needed answers. I wasn't ready to abandon this mystery. Maybe I never would be. With the bell ringing in my ears and shadows lurking in every corner of my mind, I stepped back into the world of ghosts that had haunted me since I first arrived. There was no turning back. All I could hope for was survival, and the possibility of finding truth amidst the lingering echoes. And like I'd felt all along, all while running away from the darkness, I still had no idea if what I faced was truly supernatural or simply the manifestation of fear. But either way, one thing was clear. Whatever awaited me, it wasn't done yet. As I took a deep breath and approached the schoolhouse, a chill washed over me. I was returning to the very place that had threatened to consume me whole, entangled with the shadows, forever intertwined with those unquiet lives. I had a story to tell, and maybe, just maybe, the key to set them free.